We are on the last lesson of the unit, Unit 3, Lesson 7, naming compounds with metals that have more than one charge. So you need to be able to name compounds that contain metals with more than one possible charge, as the title says. No new vocabulary. Just to connect it to last lesson, it's basically the opposite skill. So last time we went from the name to the formula, and now we're going to go from the formula to the name. Alright, so the idea of the lesson is that if I give you a compound such as MnO, that you can write me the proper name. Now, connecting it to what we've done before, you should be asking yourself, are these metals or nonmetals? Well, manganese is a transition metal. If you don't believe me, go find it. And oxygen is a nonmetal. So that means that this is definitely ionic because it contains a metal. And therefore, normally, I would name it manganese oxide, right? The full name of the metal, and then the root of the non plus IDE. The difference here is that manganese has more than one possible charge. Okay? And so remember last lesson that we needed to put that charge in parentheses? Of course you do. But I have to do a little bit of work to figure out what is the charge of manganese. Well, what do I know? I know the ratio of elements, right? I know that there's one manganese bonded to one oxygen. I know that because I know the subscripts in the formula are 1 and 1. I also know for sure that the charge of oxygen has to be 2 minus. So I just ask myself, what charge does manganese need to have in order to balance out the charge here? Well, if I ask myself that, it actually becomes pretty obvious that the charge of manganese is 2 plus. And remember that that is what I put in the parentheses. Okay, I put the charge of it. Manganese 2 plus. Alright, so that is my final answer for that name of that compound. Now, you might even wonder, or you should have wondered, now how do I know that manganese has more than one charge? Well, because I'm going to give you a list of elements that have more than one charge, and you're going to have to memorize it. Okay? That's life. Alright, let's do an example here. If you think you can do the, if you think you can name this right now, just go ahead and pause me, write the name, and then check your answer. If you can't, you need to be writing steps down. So the first step is just write the name of the metal. I know that lead has more than one charge, so I need to fill in the parentheses, and then I need to write the root of the nonmetal with IDE. That's step 1. Okay, step 2 is find the charge that goes inside of here. And there's actually a lot more steps involved in that. So you can say like step 2A, step 2B. Okay, so the next thing we need to do in order to find the charge is draw what this looks like. What does that look like? Well, it definitely looks like there's one PB bonded to 2 CLs. Okay, so that's the next step, is draw it out. The next step is write down the charges that you absolutely are sure of. I'm absolutely sure that chlorine always has a 1 minus charge. Okay. The next step is ask yourself, what charge needs to be here in order to balance out and make a neutral compound? Well, hopefully you said that the charge of lead needs to be 2 plus, because that 2 plus will balance out the 2 minus. The last step is to go ahead and write the charge as a Roman numeral inside of those parentheses. All right, another example for you. I want you to see if you can, using your notes, write down the chemical name for NiBr2. Go ahead and try and pause me, please. Okay. So I know it's nickel. Just forgot how to spell it. I know it's going to have more than one charge. And I know that that's bromide. Now I'm going to draw it. I know there's one nickel. And I know that there's two bromides. I absolutely know that the charge of this is 1 minus and 1 minus. And therefore the charge of this has to be 2 plus to balance that out. And that means that I write the charge right there. So if you wrote nickel 2 bromide, you are correct. Yay. Alright, I always want to see if you know your stuff. So this is a hard example, but go ahead and try this one next. Okay, I'm going to give you the answer, so pause me if you need to. Alright, I'm back to nickel. I know it has more than one charge. And this is nitride. I'm going to draw it. I have 3 nickels. And then I have 2 nitrogen ions. I don't know the charge of nickel, but I know the charge of this is 3 minus. So what does the charge of each of the nickels need to be? The total charge of that is 6 minus, right? 3 minus and 3 minus is 6 minus. So I need those to add up to 6 plus. So what does the charge of each nickel need to be to get 6 plus? 2 plus, 2 plus, 2 plus will give me 6 plus. So the charge of each of the nickels is 2. Alright? So that was a tricky one. If you got that example, you should feel pretty good, like you have it. Okay? This wraps up another lesson, and you want to make sure that you are able to tell me the steps you need to follow to write a chemical name for compounds containing a metal with more than one possible charge, and number 2, use those steps to write the proper names. So make sure you have them down, make sure you can use them, or, as always, come in with questions.